Welcome back. We're discussing the tense state between Israelis and Palestinians following the recent attacks on Gaza. Where does this leave the prospect of long-term peace? Well, discussing that with me is internationally renowned musician and peace activist Daniel Barenboim, who during a New Year's Eve concert in Vienna expressed his hope that 2009 would be a, quote, year of peace in the world and of human justice in the Middle East. The legendary maestro Daniel Barenboim is internationally acclaimed as a pianist and conductor, but has also become widely known for championing human and Palestinian rights. He grew up in Israel, but is an outspoken critic of Israeli settlements. Mr. Barenboim believes Israel has the right to defend itself, but not at the expense of civilian casualties. His efforts to show solidarity with the Palestinian people have included holding concerts in the West Bank, and in January 2008 he accepted an honorary Palestinian citizenship. Well, together with the late Palestinian-American intellectual Edward Said, Mr. Barenboim founded the West Eastern Divan Orchestra, which includes both Arab and Israeli musicians. He describes it as a musical organization, not a political one. And don't forget, you can join our conversation with your questions and comments. Log on to livestation.com/AJE, enter the chat room, and then take part. And Daniel Barenboim joins us from Milan. Sir, it's a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to talk to you again.
Good to have you back, Guy. I have to ask you about your views on how things have been set back after the past few weeks of military assault in Gaza. Considering how much effort you put into the peace, into your peace cause, what sort of setback have you seen?
Well, I think the setback is tremendous because it simply repeats the events of the past, thinking that the military solution will solve the problem. And there isn't a military solution. The conflict, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, is not a normal political conflict between two nations that have disagreements about oil or about water or borders. This kind of conflict can be solved diplomatically or, failing that, militarily, as we have seen hundreds of times in history. But our conflict is a conflict between two peoples that are deeply convinced they have the right to live on the same piece of land. How do you want to solve this militarily? Not even diplomatically. It can only be solved through the acceptance of this fact. And therefore, I don't think that it requires only new impetus. It requires a change of direction.
Now, of course, you've taken a very strong grassroots approach, and it's been successful, bringing together young Israelis and Palestinians playing together in an orchestra. And you've seen how, certainly at one level, the generations can live together. But, of course, it does take some kind of diplomatic initiative. And in the US, we've seen a new president come into office, Barack Obama, who seems to be giving it some attention. What hopes do you have of him and the team he's putting together, people like George Mitchell?
My hope is that they understand that what has been going on for the last 40 years or so has not worked. When I say that I'm against the military solution, it's not that I am a naive pacifist. I have seen all the different military options fail. I have seen every Israeli military victory turn into a political defeat. And it is obvious that this is not going to work in the long term, and it's not going to work for the Palestinians either. And it's very clear that, and we have seen that now in Gaza, that Hamas will not be able to win a military victory against Israel, but Israel can lose to Hamas in many ways. I think it is time to put away preconditions, to put away unrealistic hopes of getting rid of the other, and everybody has to sit down at the table without preconditions and make it their business to find a solution which we all know what it will look like.
Maestro, what's going to work? A two-state solution or a single state, a one-state solution, considering a lot of people are saying there's not much Palestinian land left and not much of a Palestinian prospect for a two-state solution following what happened in Gaza?
I think that this will sort itself later. I don't think now it's the moment to start with this kind of a discussion. I don't think that a one-state solution, we are getting to a point where neither a one-state nor a two-state solution look possible. One because of political reasons and the other for reasons on the ground. I think we have to start with a two-state solution so that the Palestinians get their dignity and they get the sense of justice that is owed to them. And Israel has to realize that all these settlements are impede the progress towards peace. The only security for Israel is to be accepted by the Palestinians. This is the only worthwhile security for the state of Israel. Therefore, this is not a situation where we will find a solution that is good for the one and bad for the other. And I think that whether it is a one-state solution or a two-state solution or some form of federation, this will be a natural development of events. What now has to happen is the Palestinians have to get equality of rights. They have to get the freedom that they need and the dignity that they need, and they have to then also stop using violence as a means of getting what they want, because it doesn't really bring them that.
You managed to, when you set up the orchestra, you managed to bring together young Palestinians and Israelis, and they had to overcome their prejudices. Now, I wonder, with what's happened in Gaza now, and certainly how it's been viewed around the world and viewed among the Palestinians, how do you think that the people who've been witnessing this can overcome the hate that will be generated? There must be a lot of setbacks in terms of how much people hate each other now because of what's happened.
We don't believe in softening the disagreements. We believe in letting everyone speak out and say what they think and what they feel. And there have been many disagreements, you know, terrible disagreements. But after the disagreements came a very important phrase, a very important sentence for me that said, but because of this, or maybe in spite of this, we want to be together, we want to be together, and we want to really become the symbol of a model that we can be.
Of course, with the news showing basically the conflict, there's often very little coverage of where there is common ground. And I wonder, based on the experience you've had with the orchestra, whether you see a widespread feeling of common ground among Israelis and Palestinians, or is it just small pockets such as in the orchestra?
I think, unfortunately, I have to be realistic and say that it is only small pockets. I don't see the Israeli society really thinking this way. I don't know the Palestinian society that well. I'm sure there are different tendencies there as well. But, you know, there's something that is very interesting. Whenever there are polls in Israel, they say 70 or 80% of the Israeli public wants peace. And then also 70 or 80 or maybe even more approve military actions as the one we have seen. And the question is, how does one explain that? And the explanation is very simple, that I think basically, the great majority of Israelis do not know what the price of peace is. And the price of peace is, first of all, acceptance of the fact that the Palestinians have a narrative, have a history that makes it difficult, if not impossible, to coincide with the Israeli narrative and with the Israeli history.
And Maestro, one thing you were talking about was both sides having to realize the other side's point of view. One of the things that critics say is that, unfortunately, it seems that the same old suspects are in charge. You have the elections coming up in Israel, and it's pretty much the same roundup of people who are vying for power in Israel. There's the issue of Fatah and Hamas, and pretty much the same leaders in power. To what degree does there need to be a generational change in the leadership of both sides in order for there to be a true lasting peace?
Well, I don't know whether one needs a change of generation, but certainly a change of mentality. I think this is very important. I think that what has been accepted as the norm and the correct way of thinking has unfortunately shown that it hasn't worked. So we have to really change direction, and it really is a very difficult step, but it has to be done. Otherwise, it will never move forward. And also, one, unfortunately, one cannot forget the fact that there are people really, I think, on both sides who do not want a solution, who do not want a solution that can be accepted really by both sides.
Politics is woven into pretty much everything concerning the Israeli-Palestinian situation. And I wonder, when you say your orchestra is a musical organization, not a political one, how are you able to avoid the politics that are so inherent in the situation in the region?
Well, ours is not a political program, if you want, because we don't have a political line that we represent. The only political line that we represent is that we say that we don't believe that there is a military solution to the conflict, and that we believe that the destinies of the two people, of the Israeli and Palestinian people, are inextricably linked. This is all. Everything else is a question of trying. It's not an orchestra for peace, as has been very often flatteringly described. It is, if you want, an orchestra against ignorance. There are many aspects of this conflict that are not symmetrical. Israel has enjoyed independence and being a nation for 60 years. The Palestinians are still waiting for it. This is one of the most obvious asymmetrical parts of it. But the symmetry of part of the conflict is the ignorance that reigns on both sides.
Your frank views and your willingness to accept an honorary Palestinian citizenship obviously puts you in the spotlight and makes you something of a target, certainly among the more hardline Israelis. How do you cope with the criticism you get and people calling you a traitor to Israel and saying that you've turned against the Israeli interest?
Listen, I have not spared criticism to those that I feel are going in the wrong way. So I have no right to expect anything from them that then counter criticism. This is perfectly normal. I would not like to be complimented by people who I don't really frankly respect and whom I criticize.
If you end up in a situation where you are made to take a choice, whether it's supporting one side or the other, or if you're put in a position where you have to be a little more frank in supporting one cause, what would you do?
One can belong to both, and because the both is in a certain way a unity with differences, but a unity. You cannot think of Israel without the Palestinians, and you cannot think of Palestine without the Israelis. And I think the sooner we come to accept that, the quicker we will be able to move forward.
What happens next? What do you hope to achieve now with the orchestra?
My hope is that we will be able to play in all the countries that are represented in the Divan. In other words, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Jordan, in Egypt, in Palestine, in Israel, and in Iran. The day we can make this tour, we will have achieved the full dimension of the orchestra. And I would use this opportunity, if I may, to speak on speaking on Al Jazeera, to say to all of these countries, please understand what we represent is not a political line. What we represent is the ability to show ourselves and the world that when Israelis, Palestinians, and Arabs come together, they can enhance each other, and that this is much better than fighting each other. Let us come to your countries. Let us come and play in Damascus. Let us come and play in Cairo. Let us come and play in Tel Aviv. Let everybody accept the presence of the enemy, if you want, in the orchestra, to come and play and to show that this is not a political organization. And I think this might be a great inspiration to the public in all these countries.
Well, Maestro Daniel Barenboim, congratulations on your efforts. I hope that you can continue in light of all the things that have been happening. Thank you very much for joining us on Al Jazeera and talking with your views.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching too. Our guest tomorrow is the Indian Foreign Minister Pranab Mukherjee in an exclusive interview with Al Jazeera on the Mumbai attacks of 2008. Be sure to join us for that. From me and the team, we'll see you next time.